Marius, I think we'll start with Christian Comotto, who is the 18-year-old central midfielder at AC Milan. What I noticed that he was obviously on loan last season in Serie B. He's returned to Milan. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience of AC Milan, at least back in the day, going back maybe 10, 15 years ago when they, were challenging for Champions League titles, was never a club that were famous for developing young players. Has that changed in recent years? If so, forgive my ignorance and let me know. But how likely are we to see like an 18-year-old central midfielder get game time at AC Milan and develop into a top talent?
That's, of course, the big issue, and it's always the big issue with Italian football in general. Since the national team failed to qualify for the World Cup, there has, of course, been renewed discussions about the youth development of the clubs and how that can help the Squadra Azzurra to gain like some momentum again. And I think that on some level, some clubs try to understand that and change things. If that really works out, we'll have to see. And of course, I can't predict that Comotto will have like 30 games at the end of the season. It might even be the case that he will go out on loan again. He was at Spezia last season. Of course, as a 17-year-old at that time, he couldn't save them from relegation. But as a player of that age to play some 20 games in the second league, it's quite something. Even more than Serie A in the last years. Serie B was always the league of the experienced players, and you could only fight for promotion if you have some 30-year-old veterans in your team. And to be brave enough to give a player like Comotto this time, I think that that is quite something, and it shows that he is an exceptional talent. He was that in the Primavera for Milan in the U19 league, and we'll see if he goes out on loan again. I think that it will be in Serie A, not in Serie B. But I hope that he stays and that he can develop alongside Luka Modric, who has renewed his contract for another year. And there already have been made lots of comparisons between the two. Not only because Comotto looks a bit like Modric, but because because of this hairstyle, but because there are similarities in the style of play. He's got lots of ball control and pressing resistance even at that age, and he's really well in tight spaces. Has really good for a central midfielder, really good dribbling statistics. In the U19 league, I don't know how that worked out in Serie B, but he was at that in Primavera. He was very good, and he's a really strong passer. Of course, a number 8 or number 10, he has to be a really good passer. But I think when he works alongside Modric for a year, he doesn't get injured and whatever, he can be a player that gets thrown in. This is something like the French clubs do that, the German clubs do that. They give, even the top clubs, they give those young players the playing time. And if Ruben Amorim works out at Milan as a coach, I can't predict that, of course. And as a UK football expert, him better than I do. And if they play for Champions League qualification and they don't struggle to get in the top 4, then I think there are no arguments against bringing a player like Comotto into the games in the second half or whatever. And
Yeah,
then, of course, as an 18-year-old with some games at Milan, his market value will rise
of
strongly.
course. Of course. I mean, my next question was, how does Ruben Amorim fit into all this? And I would say, even though I do watch a lot of Premier League football, I still came away from Amorim's time at Man United a little puzzled as to what he is as a manager, what his record is, what his priorities are. I'm sure if we had Gonçalo Santos on right now, who's our Portuguese football expert, he'd maybe have a better idea of it. But I would think, having earned his stripes, if you will, at Sporting Lisbon, he obviously has a very strong grounding in developing young players, because that's obviously what that club is all about. And then when I look at the AC Milan squad for this season, and I look at the sheer number of central midfielders in that squad, and, there are some relatively young players. There's obviously Yashari, Fofana, Musa, but there's also a lot of kind of older players. You mentioned Luka Modric, but there's also players like Loftus-Cheek, Adrien Rabiot, who's coming off the back of a pretty poor campaign with France at the World Cup. Do you think Amorim might come into this Milan team and say, well, I'm obviously here to change things. There's a lot of kind of older heads in that team, a lot of people who've been here for maybe a long time or don't really represent the future of the club. And while I'm not going to suggest that he's going to tell someone like Luka Modric to move on, because he's maybe a legend of the game, do you think he might see an opportunity in bringing in someone like Christian Comotto and saying, well, this guy's the future of AC Milan. He has to play a role in the team somehow, maybe not a starting role, but at least off the bench. And is that something that can maybe help him get the fans on side very early on?
Yeah, I think so, yes, because the Academy of Milan has developed some great talents, and they didn't bring them in, and they transferred them to other clubs in the last 10 years, and they developed elsewhere. And I think that at some point, when they had some good seasons in the last 10 years, and they had some very bad ones, including the last one, and at some point the fans are fed up with having a team that's not fighting for their colors, and everything surrounding those issues. And of course, it can be an argument to bring the fans on your side when you have an 18-year-old from your own youth, and you make him stand out as the big prospect. I think that from a marketing point of view, that's that's a given.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be fascinating to see how he does and how Ruben Amorim does at AC Milan, and whether the two will be intertwined or not. But as you said, Marius, he'll either do well at AC Milan, or he'll surely be promptly sent on loan to another Serie A club, and we'll be able to keep an eye on him as well.